Hey everybody, happy Friday morning all across North America. My name's Ian Hill. Welcome, 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 welcome. Building the public sector, one leader at a time. This is our fourth year of partnering with the American Public Works Association to offer these training programs to departments all over North America. And we are literally all over North America. We have 35 departments represented, departments or agencies, and I think we got 2 private engineering firms in addition to that. And we are literally from Fredericton, Dylan and Kip and all the boys and gals in Fredericton, New Brunswick, welcome back, to Anaheim, California, Stockton, California, El Citro, right? Is that how you say it? El Citro. And then all the way to Florida. We've got St. Cloud, Florida. Whoever just put in the chat box, they went to UCF. I asked him, are you a Florida State or Florida fan? He's like, I'm neither, buddy. I'm UCF. And then we got, who else is in Florida? We got Fort Lauderdale, Clearwater, I think. And then we're all the way up in Oregon, Lane County, Oregon. And we got Niagara region of Canada, right? And we've got Whitby, Ontario. I think we got somebody in Alberta. We got a department in Alberta. And then in the heartland of the United States, we got Lenexus, Kansas, and we got Indiana. We got somebody from Wisconsin, and anyways. So at the beginning, when you saw that video there, you saw images or logos from the different communities. If you haven't sent yours in, send yours in, because we want to see images of every one of the municipalities, agencies, organizations, or communities that are represented. Your logo, images of your employees at work, landmarks from your town, silly pictures of your people, whatever. Send them in. Why? Because every Friday now, or every other Friday or so, thousands, so we have on average about 100 to 200, depending on the size of the department, some bigger, some smaller, professionals joining us every Friday. So we have like 4,000 public works professionals going through this at once, at all levels. You, the executive leader, mid-level later today, and then frontline even later today. All at once gathering. There should be a dynamic exchange of information. There should be a celebration of the profession, and we should all get better together. I was sitting down and looking at it. This is our 4th year. Is that right, Jeff? 4th year of doing this in one iteration of another. And over the years now, because some years we did it twice in a year, do you know that we've had over 50,000 public works professionals that we have interacted with for blocks of between 12 and 15 weeks? That's crazy. Crazy. It's been a tremendous journey for me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a big advocate of you and what you do. I've been honored to have been one of the keynote speakers this past year in Toronto, and just a few short years ago, 3 years ago in Denver as well. Twice keynote speaker at the APWA International Congress. Tremendous honor that I've been asked. I think they were drunk and just didn't have anybody else. And so they're like, hey, Ian, he'll do it. No, it was a tremendous honor, both in Denver and Toronto. But my understanding and my support of and my advocacy for the public works sector wasn't immediate. I took a very circuitous route to get to the understanding of your importance and your value that you personally and your departments make in a community. My background is not public works. I'm not an engineer. I didn't come up as an outside guy who worked my way up. I'm not one of you. Then how did you get into all this? Well, I was in business. I helped run a big business, and at one point had like 1,200 employees. And as we started to have success in life, I started getting involved in my community. And I started foundations open schools and youth centers and built housing complex and just tried to give back because I had more than I could have ever hoped to have. And so I tried to give back. It was my responsibility. And in that endeavor, I started to do research. You know, what does it take to build a great community? What were the keys to a thriving society? Now, I'm not a very educated man. I don't have any fancy letters after my name. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't have them. I barely graduated from grade 12, as you'd say in Canada. Grade 12. I barely graduated from grade 12 or barely graduated from high school, as you'd say in the States. And although not educated, I'm kind of self-educated. So I dove in and started looking throughout history. What does it take to build thriving communities? What does it take to have a great society? What are some of the keys? You know, I'm philanthropically involved in these things, but what's the answers? You know what I stumbled upon? I stumbled upon that all great societies throughout history had leading edge infrastructure for their day. That infrastructure was key. And whether it was the Greeks or the Romans, whether it was the Dutch or the Spanish, whether it was the English, British Empire, or whether it was us in North America, one of the competitive advantages that those societies have, one of the things that set it apart, one of the things that made it special was leading edge infrastructure for its day. And whether that was some, windmill in Holland, or whether it was the aqueducts of Rome, leading edge infrastructure was key. And then secondly, that Plato was right when Plato said that there was no greater life lived than that committed to public service. Some people think he was talking about volunteerism, but there was no volunteerism in his day. You didn't go down to the Boys and Girls Club and volunteer in ancient Athens. He was talking about people like you, those that have committed their lives to the service of the public. Those two things stuck in my head, and more importantly, stuck in my heart. So I started to do research on the public works, its condition in North America, which was kind of a shocker to me. Then I started to do more research on what you do, how you do it. Because if I wanted to be a person that helped build thriving communities, then I had to support you. Well, what's completely, totally, crazily ironic is right about that time, I got a phone call from the American Public Works Association saying to me, Karen Wilson saying to me, Ian Hill, we're calling because we'd like you to build something for our constituents. They had heard of how we had supported the public sector in other ways, city managers and park and recreation and others. And she said, will you help us? I said, that's kind of funny, Karen, that you're calling because you are on my heart. Your people are on my heart. And there was silence. She didn't know what to say to that because those are the words I used. I said, you're on my heart. And then I went on to say what I'll say to you right now. I've come to realize that you are a key to building thriving communities that all would want to live in the 21st century. And that your people have unique skill sets that make them special leaders that could get things done and make things happen. They have the ability to take nothing and make it something regularly. And they provide the platform, the framework, the infrastructure for 21st century community to happen. I was yelling at her on the phone. I know she was probably like, what a freak. What is wrong with this guy? And that's where the journey began. Now, why is that important in the context of this program? Because you must know where we're coming from. You're an executive leader. I'm an executive leader. You have a big budget, relatively speaking, to the size of your community. You have thousands of people's lives in your hands. Well, what do you mean? Well, think about it. Millions upon billions of dollars of commerce go over your roads. Little kids go in school buses over your bridges. When people turn on that tap, they got to have clean water. That's not the case all over the world. And from the beautification of your community, if that's in your portfolio, to the wastewater treatment. You touch every citizen from cradle to grave. You're a leader, I'm a leader. And from one leader to another, you've got to understand why we're doing this for the full impact to make a difference in your department. This isn't a game or isn't a joke. Well, 35 communities, you're probably making a ton of money, man. Well, you know how much we paid. You know. You signed off on it. $795. $795 to literally train thousands of people. And of that $795, APWA gets half and we get half. Now stop and think about that. We don't make a penny. It costs us money to do this. Why are we doing it? Because you're important and your department is important. And we are in critical and changing times. And more than ever before, we need your department to be great. And not just because of public works, but because of the lack of trust that people have in public services today. And you and I both know public entities being bashed all over North America. And when people don't believe in their local municipality to do what needs to be done, we have anarchy, man. So this is bigger and broader than just some leadership program. This is about establishing the public sector in its vital and important role. That's why it says building the public sector one leader at a time. So you as an executive leader are critical in all of this, not just for your own personal growth, but the way it's deployed across the department. We literally, over the last 4 years, have seen departments transformed. Not every time. Not every time. Not in every department. Not in the hundreds of departments that have participated. Not every time. But you know what one of the number one determining factors is? The level of participation of the executive leaders. When the director is in, when the director is doing the assignments, when the director is doing the stuff, when the director and the executive leaders are talking it up amongst the people, in between the broadcasts, making it a part of what we are about as a department, man, the thing is like a rocket. When it's not so much, when the director's disengaged, when they're not really involved, when they're not taking it serious, then you have pockets of improvement. That's never been bad. Otherwise, we wouldn't have kept doing it, right? So obviously, it's not bad. But the difference between optimal and pretty good is usually the level of involvement of you. So you got to know why we're doing it, and you got to know the important role that you play in it to make transformational change within your department or be a catalyst for the beginnings of that change. Now, I'm not implying that you're sick, but you don't need to be sick to get better. So the whole idea here is that the executive leaders, the mid-level, and the front line all do it together. We're all learning together. So we're doing this because of your value and in your importance and a significant difference you make in a community, and you could even argue generational difference. And if everybody in the department could just get better at one thing over the next 12 weeks, think about what would happen in your department. And as you may know, we're going to ask you and every participant to make a commitment. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to send out a note to everybody and say, what's your commitment? What are you going to do? What are you going to get better at? And you and I will be on that same page together. Now, I won't let you know I won't tell you what everyone's commitments are because they're private. But I will tell you whether people made commitments or not and how many commitments came out of your department. We literally should have thousands of commitments across North America of what public works professionals are going to get better at. Just one thing. What are they going to get better at over the next 12 weeks? Think of the energy of that in your department. All right. What we're going to do today, we got 45 minutes. What are we going to do today? I'm going to give you some background on the program just so you're clear, because maybe you didn't watch the orientation video. And then we're going to ignite this thing. Now you say, well, that's kind of a trite little term. Ignite the fire. Oh. Like, who came up with that? Excuse me, I did. You know what? My head's really shiny. How come we didn't put that stuff on my head today? Shiny head. Crazy. Anyways, sorry, little ADD moment there. So, ignite the fire. What's that all about? Well, it's about the physical law of motion called inertia. and that inertia is in play. What's inertia? If you recall, inertia is that law that says that something in place tends to stay in place, or something on a trajectory tends to stay on that trajectory unless there is a force applied greater than the one that's applied at the time. Well, people have inertia. You could call it a rut. Departments have inertia. It sounds like this. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. Inertia. Well, to overcome inertia, we got to ignite the thing. So the first 3 weeks of this is about overcoming inertia. We're going to do it by looking introspectively. We're going to do it by challenging. We're going to do it by questioning. And then we'll be prepared for the last 9 weeks to do some learning and gain some competencies and gain some skills as it revolves around leadership. This isn't a vocational discussion. The assumption is that you are vocationally competent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be an executive leader. This discussion is exclusively around leadership competencies, and more specifically, the leadership competencies that we would suggest that times require. Now look, I'm not going to treat you like a child. You're an executive leader. And that takes us kind of to the next point right there in the middle of your page. Hopefully you have your handouts. What I assume about you. So now you know where I'm coming from, big picture, why we're doing this. Because we must build the public sector, we must engender confidence in communities, and specifically in public works. We are in challenging times, and you touch every citizen from cradle to grave. And organizational leadership capacity is key, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But what about you specifically? Well, I had to assume some things about you, and it's important that you know my assumptions about you, otherwise none of this makes sense. So number one, I assume that you're a professional executive leader. What does that mean? That means that you don't need somebody else to move you into action. That means you know how to identify a problem, act as a catalyst for a solution to the problem, and then take that solution and implement it and bring it to fruition, and then finally analyze the results. I assume that you can do all 4 of the 5 of those things, or at least the majority of those, because that's what executive leaders can do. Now, they don't have all the answers, but they at least can facilitate the coming to an answer. And they don't need somebody else to point out a problem. They see problems, or they have mechanisms and systems and processes to identify thoughts, ideas, concerns, and do something with them. I also assume, as a professional, you own your own personal development. And as an executive professional, you own the development of your people. That you understand that your people are your most important asset, and that you must marshal human capital. What's human capital? The love someone has within them, the passion, the compassion, the skill, the knowledge, the sweat, the insight, the wisdom, that you have the ability to marshal human capital, or at least you understand you must marshal human capital. Not bark at human capital, not intimidate human capital, not scream at human capital, not autocratically lead human capital, because that won't work today. But instead, you understand that you must marshal human capital and move it towards a common goal. Professional. Doesn't necessarily mean you have fancy letters after your name, because I don't think you need to have fancy letters after your name to be a professional. I think you need to take pride in your work and take your own personal development very, very seriously. Secondly, I assume that you want to do something great. That you're not one of those individuals, those poor souls that's a clod of flesh that whines and complains that the world will not bend to your will. I don't believe you're one of those kind of people. I believe that you're a force of nature. I believe as an executive leader, you realize the important footprint you have in your community. I believe that you as an executive leader understand that when your department is great, it's a huge step towards your community being great. I also believe you're not a whiner and complainer, talking about we ain't got enough money, we ain't got enough this, we ain't got enough that. You see that, and then you're advocating and working hard to do something about that. And I also, parenthetically, believe you want to do something great with your life. You see, I assume that most of you aren't just leaders in your department. Some of you coach. Some of you are involved in your place of faith. Some of you are volunteers in nonprofit organizations. So you're trying to do great things not only in your department, outside your department. And then finally, I assume you'll actually take something that we talk about and try it. In other words, you're not so arrogant to think you know everything about leadership. Obviously, or you wouldn't be enrolled. So you'll take something and try it. Those are my assumptions. And why is that important? So you know where I'm coming from. Because that's who I think I'm talking to. What I just described is who I think I'm talking to. But look at the big bubble down there at the bottom. You don't need to be sick to get better. Look, some of you have forgotten more about what you do than I'll ever know. And many of you have great wisdom, leadership wisdom that you're going to be able to share with all of us. And we'll give you mechanisms to do so. So no guru here. Barely the sharp, and not even close to being the sharpest pencil in the box or the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Look, I took that short bus to school every day. I know I'm not the sharpest guy in the room. Now, we have done some things. That's true. And I have led some things. That's true. And we've done 7 things that have never been done before. That's true. However, I know I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box. Not the sharpest guy in the room. I know that. So no guru here. Just on the side, you and I journeying together. I'll take some things that I think to be truth and I'll lay them at your feet. You pick it up, you examine it. If it makes sense, take off and run. If it doesn't apply, isn't relevant, toss it to the side. All right, turn the page. Quick, what can you expect from us? You can expect us to have a scientifically based change continuum. In other words, behavioral change model that when applied should change behavior. Now, if you want the science behind that, look at the next sheet. And you can read the next sheet so you understand where this thing is coming from. And why is it important for you to know this? So that you understand how to deploy it with your people. Don't just turn this over to your admin assistant. You get involved. Again, if we could get everybody that's taken the program to pick out one thing and try to be a little bit better at it, at the end of the 12 weeks, how much better would your department be? A heck of a lot better. So understand the model so you know how to mold it to your specific situation and use it and maximize its impact. So this will give you the science, but just a quick overview, 21 to 28 days to establish a habit and a blended learning approach. So we do this live thing and then we reinforce for 21 days. 4 21-day blocks, 12 weeks. Concept introduced, reinforced via email, video, text, blended learning, right? Some people learn by seeing, some people learn by hearing, some people learn by talking, some people learn by doing. So blended learning approach. Are there assignments? Yeah, but not many. Just enough to make people think. Just enough to put pen to paper. Just enough. Yeah, but we're slammed. That's why it's all on the portal. So if people can't do the work, you can always come back to it. And remember, you have this for a year. From now till next year, you have access to this. You get it for a year. And remember, you can train every employee. There's no additional cost. And remember, you can train everybody in your municipality. Like some departments reach out to the airport authority. They reach out to other departments within the municipality or partner agencies. So as long as it has your logo on it, in other words, as long as they're connected to you, they can participate in the program too. What an incredible benefit. I mean, one municipality had 3,000 people go through the program just themselves. Why do I tell you that? To maximize your investment. All right, what do we expect from you? Give your best, do the assignments, be coachable, put something into practice, and give us feedback. That's all. And if you're slammed, do it as you can do it because it's all housed on the portal. All right, that gives you some idea of what you can expect from us, what we expect from you. If you want more information, watch the orientation video. Don't just tell your executive assistant to watch the orientation video. You watch it. It's 19 minutes. So you know what's going on, so you know how to deploy this tool in your department and maximize its impact. Look at what this Italian philosopher said. He said, nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to attempt, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. A new order of things is difficult to introduce. Anytime we're talking about new approaches or new styles or doing things a little bit differently, it's always challenging. Why? It's a new order of things. But progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. If you're not completely satisfied with the way things are going in your department, I didn't say they were bad. I just said if you're not completely satisfied, or if you're not completely satisfied with the way things are going on in your community, or if you're not completely satisfied with the way things are going in your home, then something's got to change. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Einstein said it best. He said, everything within us was only enough to get us where we're at today. If we want to go any further, if we want to be any better, then something was going to have to change. We must embrace change. Our departments, in my opinion, must be great at change. Listen to what Drucker said. Turn the page. Listen to what Drucker said. Drucker said that every couple hundred years in Western history, society rearranged itself. And the society that the grandparents knew was completely different than the society the grandchildren know. Time of transformation. Don't be surprised, everybody. Every once in a while, the world's going to go schwang. That's the international word for what the hell is going on? Or international sound for what the heck's going on. So what I would suggest to you is we got to get good at changing. There's no safety and security in staying the same. And ironically, we have to look at the context that we're leading in and how it is different. Two key changes that I see that are critical for us to understand as executive leaders. One, it's all about organizational leadership capacity. And two, the power of alignment. Let's unpack those two things. You got some white space around these arrows. Take some notes. Organizational leadership capacity. What in the world is that, Ian? Today's executive leader understands that I can't be top heavy. I can't have one person supervising three. That ain't going to work. Don't have the budget for it. So I've got to develop the informal leaders within my organization. So organizational leadership capacity is about great leadership ability throughout the organization of both formal and informal leaders. That every nook and cranny of the department has somebody that knows how to lead. And leadership is happening at all levels. Organizational leadership capacity. The power of the informal leader to get things done. Now the funny thing is, we know informal leaders. But usually we know them from a negative sense. The guy or gal that's been around for a while, that exerts influence on the other people, but influences them the wrong way. How many of you know somebody like that? That is a manifestation of the informal leader. I'm just using it because it's such an overt example. It's a manifestation of the informal leader. And if we could marshal the human capital of that informal leader, imagine the power. Organizational leadership capacity. Do you have good leaders up and down, not only the chain of command, but also horizontally? Does that make sense, Jeff? So it's not just good leaders vertically. It's do you have good leaders horizontally? Something powerful about that. And then this alignment thing. You know what's funny is, literally close to 300 departments have now participated in this crazy gig. It's nuts. And I can tell departments that are doing great and departments that are challenged. How can you tell? Alignment. Let me give you a visual. It looks something like this. The stated mission of a department. Now remember, I interact with all levels of a department, right? Via email, phone calls sometimes. I get to know you guys. 12 weeks, 15 weeks sometimes, but 12 weeks for this one. So there's the stated mission of the department. That's what the director tells me, right? That's what the commissioner tells me, right? But within the department, that's going on. Anybody ever sat in this meeting? Lack of alignment. You ever had your back out of alignment? How'd that feel for you? Hurt? Ever had your car out of alignment? How much did that cost? A ton. A lack of alignment costs a ton of money, and it makes the workplace incredibly challenging, stressful. You feel like you're swimming in mud. Alignment. But there's something powerful that happens when everybody throughout the department understands their role, understands the goal, understands what winning looks like. When they understand the goal, when they understand their role, when they understand what winning looks like. This program can help with organizational alignment. This program can help raise the leadership capacity of your department. But it starts with you and your buy-in to it. But make no mistake, 2 key elements to a successful department in the 21st century: leaders at all levels of the organization that know how to get things done, that know how to collaborate, that know how to work with each other, that know how to marshal human capital. Not bark at human capital, autocratically lead human capital, but marshal human capital. And alignment of time, talent, and treasure towards common goals. Today's executive leader knows how to take this and make it this. They know how to take 1 and make it 2. This is like the optometrist. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. So, if you got this, it's okay. We just got to work to get it to that. But that takes certain skills. And those are the skills we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. And to some degree or another, talking with your people about. So this should be an aligning conversation. Alignment. There is significant power in alignment. And there's incredible exponential impact when we have high leadership capacity. I'm not implying that you don't have good leaders, but you probably don't have enough. That's the key, growing your leadership capacity. 2 key important points. But why are they important? They're important because of the context that we're operating in. See, the content of leadership probably hasn't changed in 2,000 years. And it probably won't change for 2,000 more. The basic fundamentals. Do what you say you're going to do. Treat people with dignity and respect. Be vocationally competent. Don't demean people. Create a positive environment. Let people be heard. All that stuff. But the context that we're operating in is different. And to understand why organizational leadership capacity and the power of alignment is so critical today, we must understand the context that we're operating in. You see, I think as an executive leader, you have to continually ask yourself, are the leadership approaches I'm using, and more importantly, are the leadership approaches my people are using what the times require? When you become an executive leader, you're not judged on your performance. You're judged on the performance of the people furthest away from you. Yvonne Pfizer at our office in Edmonton, Alberta, I'm judged on her performance. Linda Stenhouse in our office, or in our employee in Blind River, Ontario, I'm judged on her performance. Gina in Carson City, Nevada, I'm judged on her performance. I'm not judged on my performance. I'm judged on my ability to get them to perform. So whoever the employee is that furthest away from you, that's how you're judged. Somebody you never see, somebody you never talk to, somebody you never meet. That's who you're judged on. So really, it's not, are you a good leader? But can you create a culture that engenders great leadership today? And so you must ask yourself the question, are the leadership approaches I'm using the ones that times require? Write that down. Are the leadership approaches I'm using the ones that times require? And then secondly, are the leadership approaches that we are using within the culture of our organization the ones that times require? I don't think there can be any more important question. Well, what about budget questions? If you have great leadership capacity across your organization, they'll be coming up with innovative ideas. And your department will be a gem, a jewel in the municipality. And you'll carry favor with not only your city manager, or if you're in Canada, CAO, but also elected officials. Because you got great leaders both vertically and horizontally. So the answer, I think, must be, not only do I understand the leadership approaches the times require, but also that my people understand the leadership approaches the times require and are utilizing them. Because the context has changed. How has it changed? Well, number one, we're in a user-driven society. Write that down. We're in a user-driven society. What does that even mean? That means people are used to today having a say. They're used to being participants in a process. They're used to being asked, what's your opinion? You stop and think about it. Almost every business you interface with now, if they have your email address, immediately after interfacing with them, they ask you, how you doing? What'd you think? How did it go? Did you like it? Were we horrible? Were we good? Almost every institution that we interface with gives us the feeling that we have a say. There's two that don't. And you happen to be both of them. One, government's not very good at asking citizens how we doing. And two, government's not very good at asking their employees how we doing, making them a part of the process. Oh, we talk about citizen engagement and we talk about engaging employees, but we do it pretty crappy on the whole. Not talking about your specific organization, just on the whole. And we wonder why people don't play. We wonder why citizens don't get engaged. And we wonder why employees sit in meetings like this. Because they're not allowed to be a part. Now we'll teach you how to do that down the road, but please, make no mistake, it's a user-driven society. The bank lets you dictate. That wasn't the way it was 25 years ago. On a Friday, we'd be scrambling to the bank at 4:59 to try to get there before the door closed, because if the door closed, we couldn't get any money. Today, I can get money wherever I want. If I have any money, I can get it wherever I want. I control now, or at least I have the impression that I do. I get to pick my music. I get to pick my show. I get to pick everything. I get to tell the world about me. We are in a selfie, narcissistic society, and you don't think that impacts the workplace? Come on. User-driven. You want to marshal human capital. You want to marshal human capital. Then you better understand it's a user-driven society. Because this arrow, if you're going to try to get this arrow to go that way, they better be allowed to be a part of the process. No, they better do their damn job. That's what they better do. Well, okay. They'll come to work, brother. They will come to work. There is no doubt about it. Why? They have mortgages to pay. But I don't know if you'll marshal their human capital, their talent, their sweat, their energy, their insight, their wisdom, their vocational competency. I don't know if you'll marshal that with an autocratic leadership approach today. I'm the boss, so you'll do. Nobody cares who the boss is anymore. Authority means nothing anymore. The only thing that means something is my ability to build a trusting relationship with you, and then I can influence you. What else has changed? How about 5 generations in the workplace? How about completely different worldviews permeate throughout your workplace? In the past, you supervised somebody that looked like you, smelled like you, tasted like you, ate what you ate, went where you went, listened to music you listened to. That's not the case anymore. That's not a value judgment. That's just to say that's a change. I'm not even talking about the family unit. I'm not even talking about the feeling of trepidation that permeates our society, the lack of trust that's out there towards leaders. Do you know that people are less trusting of leaders than ever in my lifetime? They do a survey every year. How do you feel about leaders? Nobody trusts leaders. As soon as you get the title leader, people are like, okay, what are you doing for yourself? Somehow you're screwing us over. And then you look at the public works sector in general, where many people haven't gotten raises in years. Where people got laid off a number of years ago and they haven't been put back. Now, in some communities, in many communities, the economy is turning around, but we always know when government lags behind that. You don't immediately all of a sudden start getting more money. just because people start opening more businesses in your town. There's a lag in that. You know that and I know that. So what's the context that you're operating in? Because that will dictate the leadership approach that's necessary. Now look, I'm not talking about changing your principles or changing your values. I'm not talking about that. Those are unchanging. But style, approach, the way you communicate, the way you motivate, the way you delegate, the systems and processes that you use within your department to marshal human capital, those things need to be relevant to the time. Now, there are some things that are timeless. Values, principles, timeless. Approach and style, not so much. That needs to be adjusted, in my opinion, to what the times require. Look at the next page. I love doing that. And then afterwards, I have to go pick it all up. But anyways, in the past, let me wipe this off. In the past, we thought about this whole, pyramid of leadership, right? You've been to that workshop. So, used to be like this, executive leaders up here, and then poof, flowed downhill, and so on, right? And then someone brilliant came along and inverted the pyramid and said executive leaders' job was to support the mid-level leaders who supported the frontline people. Yeah, okay. Except this. That's not even relevant anymore. Why? Because people attitudinally don't think hierarchy. Attitudinally. They don't think hierarchy. Today, attitudinally, people think, I'm just as good as you. Kiss my you-know-what. So today, I would suggest to you that the thing is flat. The world is finally flat, Columbus. Right? So then, how do you move somebody into action? I suggest to you, now again, they'll come to work, they got to pay their mortgage. I'm talking about getting people's best. I would suggest to you that the only leadership model that works today is a leadership model of influence based on trust. So my ability to occupy space in your life is based on how much you trust me. If you trust me, then you'll let me occupy more space. The more space I occupy, the more I can influence you. Don't think that's true? Look at every major corporation. They're trying to build a trusting relationship with you. They're trying to convince you that they're good guys and gals. They're trying to convince you that they're good in the community. They're trying to convince you not only that their product is good, but they're good for the world. Is that right or wrong, Jeff? Right or wrong? It is right. And why are they doing that? Because then they can occupy more space in your life. And if they can occupy more space in your life, then you'll spend more money with them. All I have to do is hold this up right here. If they can occupy more space in your life, then they know you'll spend more money with them. They try to create an ecosystem that you'll hang out in. Well, guess what? You have an ecosystem. It's called the workplace. And what you're trying to do is get the best from your people. The only way to get your best from your people is if they trust you. Now, some of the cards for some of you are stacked against you because you haven't given them a raise. Now, that wasn't your decision. It was the decision of others. Or maybe this thing changed or that thing changed or there was a consolidation when times were tough and you haven't come out of that. So all of a sudden that trust, not so much. In addition to that, you may have a third-party representation agreement. And then sometimes that can drive a wedge, misunderstandings or such and such. So all of a sudden, can you engender trust? It's tough. But I'll tell you right now, if you don't have trusting relationships, if your people don't trust you as an executive leader, or if they don't trust the processes that are being used, or if they don't trust the destination that you're going to, you're going to have a tough time getting all those arrows going in the right direction. You have a really tough time with this right here. Because ultimately today it's about trust. Now in the coming weeks, we'll talk about how to build those trusting relationships. But make no mistake, organizational leadership capacity and alignment. The only way to get both of those is to be able to influence the dynamic. The only way to influence the dynamic, trusting relationship in today's day and age. You're not going to be able to bark at that dynamic. You're not going to be able to autocratically lead that dynamic. You're not going to be able to threaten or intimidate that dynamic. People just go like this. I'd love to file a grievance against you. Instead, it's about building a culture of trust today. You want to build the public sector, build it one leader at a time, create a culture of trust. I'll show you how to do that in the coming weeks. Turn the page. So what are the competencies we're going to learn? Right here. You can read about them. You can read them on the website. Ian, there's 4, but there's only 12 weeks. That implies 15. The last one, continuous improvement, you're going to be able to access at your leisure. We used to do this program 15 weeks, and we just felt like that was too long. So we reduced it to 12. And then the last competency you access at your leisure, the director level. In our last 13 minutes, I've set the framework, I hope. Remember, the cool thing is we have 3 weeks to unpack this, right? 3 weeks at a time. So all I do in these is just, set the framework for a dialogue, a 3-week dialogue. You're important. You make a significant difference. You touch every citizen from cradle to grave. Times have changed, and we need different approaches if we want to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. Organizational leadership capacity and alignment are key because they are best approaches for the different contexts that we're operating in. Not just having leaders horizontally, but not just having them vertically, but also horizontally. And getting everybody to understand their goal, their role, and what winning looks like. But if you're not completely satisfied with where you're at today, and you want to move closer to that ideal that I've described, then something's got to change. Look, you can't 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = 10. And then we all get fired up and say we got to change. We got to change. We got to change. Not working. So you have a meeting. You've been in this meeting. And then we all get fired up. And we all get excited. And we have brainstorming session. You might even take those white sheets of paper and put them up on the walls. And then you write stuff on the white sheets of paper, ideas. And then you give everybody a sticky dot. And they all vote on the best ideas with the sticky dot. You ever done that? And here's what usually happens. Metaphorically. You take a 2 and you put it there. You take a 1, you put it there. You take a 4, you put it there. You take a 3, you put it there. And we all get excited. We high five. We actually high five. Great meeting! And then when it all rolls out, same answer. Nothing changes. Change. We actually got to change. Change means change. Progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. You want a different answer? Something's got to change. But we're reluctant to change. Why? We're reluctant to change because it's uncomfortable. We're reluctant to change because we don't have any energy left. We're reluctant to change because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work. But make no mistake, progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. And you can talk it. You can say it's improvement. You can say it's a lot of things. I mean, every time that Tide and Cheer, those detergents come out with a new product, they don't come out and say, our Tide sucked before, so we're doing this new one. No, they say new and improved. So if you don't like that word change, fine. Wrap new and improved around it. But the bottom line is, if you're not completely satisfied, something's going to have to change. Why are we so afraid of that word? For all the reasons that I just described and this one. Maybe we have to admit we've been wrong. But see, I don't think this is a value judgment. I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's this. Are the leadership approaches you're using getting you the results that you want and are what the times require? And if they're not, then change. And there's no shame in that. Just change. Look, in some white space, it's not on here, but I want you to write this down. I want you to name 2 people in your life that if you changed one thing over the next 30 days or next 12 weeks, 2 people who if you changed one thing in the next 12 weeks, their lives would be better. Who? Your executive assistant, your direct reports, your spouse, your kid. Whose life would be better? Mr. Executive Leader, Mrs. Executive Leader, me too, Executive Leader. You see, there's not too many people holding us accountable. So think about it yourself. Whose life would be better if you were willing to change one thing? Write their names down. Whose life would be better if you stopped yelling at them? Whose life would be better if you listened more? Whose life would be better if you asked their opinion? Whose life would be better if you weren't so grumpy on Friday afternoons? Whatever. Whose life would be better if you did a little bit more research and tried to work on whatever? Whose life would be better if you changed? Because you can't ask all your employees to pick out one thing and make a commitment to Ian if you won't make a commitment to Ian. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Now, on Monday morning, I'm going to send you a video. Get your email. I have your email. I'm going to send you a video. And it's going to unpack this process for change. Because I think you actually need a process for change. What if your department got really, really good at changing? That's where safety and security lies. What if you got exceptionally good at changing? Well, I think that starts with you. Are you good at changing? Not principles and values. But when you see something that you'd like to assimilate into your toolkit, do you know how to do it? When someone points out a deficiency to you, do you know how to rectify it? Do you know how to do change? Are you any good at changing? Well, that starts with, do you know how to change you? So on Monday morning, I'm going to send you an email. In that email, there'll be a video. In that video, it's going to explain a process for personal change. You don't need to send Anthony Robbins $1,500 in 3 easy payments. I'll give you the answer. It's right here. You get it for almost nothing. $795 for every employee. It works. How do you know that, Ian? Because I was a failure and I changed. Now, am I still working? Of course I got work to do. We all have work to do. But I'm a hell of a lot better than I was before. Because I went and did the research on how to change things and came up with this. Turn the page. So look for that on Monday morning. Now we got 7 minutes left. Is that right, Jeff? Yeah. 7 minutes left. And in the 7 minutes, you see a whole bunch of pieces of paper. Ian, we're not going to get through all that. We don't need to. In the coming weeks, I'm going to ask you, not this week, but the following week, I'm going to ask you to do this leadership history survey. And I looked at it again this morning, and later today, I'm giving your mid-level leaders a shortened version of this, and I think I'm going to give you a shortened version of this. So the one that you have here, don't worry about it. When I send you that email, not this Monday, but the following Monday, it'll be short. It'll only be 6 questions. But the whole premise here is for you to look back. How did you become the leader you are now? Because before we can go on this 12-week journey, let's figure out how you got here. Who were the influences? What were the circumstances? What were the scenarios, good and bad, that made you what you are now? I think it's advantageous for us to look back before we move forward. So that'll be in not next week, but the following week. Okay? So we can throw that away. So take that and set it aside. It's these last 2 that I want to deal with in our last 5.5 minutes. I have a tendency when I meet executive leaders that oftentimes they become quite jaded, cynical, even some of them crusty. Not all, but some. Why? Well, I think it's natural. You get beaten down, you get beat up, you get disappointed, you go through the battles, the public meetings, being called out by an elected official who doesn't know, can't lead themselves out of a paper bag, but they're trying to tell you how to do things. And all that comes with being an executive in the public sector. So I do think it's easy to get beat up, kicked around, knocked down, and become a little jaded, cynical, and maybe even a little crusty. However, I think it's important as we start this journey to understand who you really are. Your talent, your ability, your skill, your capacity. I think that's really critical. Really, really critical. Now, it's going to sound like a pep talk, but it's not meant to. It's meant to do a scientific evaluation of you, an inventory, if you will, of who you are, the capacity that you have. I believe in the human capacity. I believe it because as I do an exploration of history, I see that it was one monk that started the Protestant Reformation. There was one emperor, one general that took an empire from the borders of Macedonia throughout the world. There was one 16-year-old girl that recaptured the territory known as France. That it was a singular Thomas Jefferson that wrote that all men were created equal. And in Canada, it was a singular Terry Fox that united a nation. So I believe in the human capacity because history tells me to. Not because I'm Pollyannish. Not because I'm hopeful. Although I would suggest to you that without the capacity to hope, it's highly unlikely that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. Why? Because if you can't see tomorrow being better than yesterday, it's highly unlikely you'll take the steps to make it so. So I think it's important that we do a little inventory of who you are, what capacity you have at your disposal. Now, I won't go through the whole sheet, but I encourage you to read it. It was written by Og Mandino, a great writer, good motivational guy, inspirational guy. But you know what? It's not trite. If you have the ability to see me right now, and not all do, but if you have the ability to see me right now, that's because you have some millions of receptors in your eyes that allow you to see a bird fly through the sky, your little boy throw the ball, your little girl kick the ball. Thought I was going to say something else, but I got little girls and they kick balls. Or maybe even the look of love. If you have the capacity to hear, and not all do, but those that do have the capacity to hear, you have the capacity to hear because there's an incredible mechanism inside your head. All these little fibers that move when there's a sound. But there's a difference between hearing a sound and translating it into meaning. So can you hear the pain, the anguish, the challenge, the difficulty of today's day and age? And what will you do as a leader about it? Bury your head in the sand, say that's not my job, or will you lead? How about your ability to speak? Not everybody has that ability. My son doesn't have the ability. He only speaks 2, 3, 4 word sentences max because he has a thing called autism. 8 years old, doesn't speak. You know what it's like to be able to talk a dog off a meat truck, but you can't, your little boy can't have a conversation. He's a great kid, smart, sharp, and we're working on it. But you and I, we have the ability to speak. We can lift the despondent. We can encourage the quitter. We can lift up. We can build up. We can cry out against injustice or wrong. We have that ability. How about your brain? No computer in the world can touch your brain. I'm dumb as a box of rocks, and yet no computer in the world can touch my brain. How about your skin? How about your nervous system? How about your muscles and your bones? Phenomenal. Phenomenal. 70 billion people have lived on this planet, and there's nobody like you. Never been anybody like you. There'll never be anybody like you. You are a rare and unique treasure. 70 billion people have lived on a planet, nobody like you. If there was 70 billion of this device and one that was rare and unique, handcrafted and handmade, one that was unlike all the others, it'd be priceless. That's you. Now, why am I saying this to you? So that you understand your capacity and ability, because over periods of time, it gets beaten out of us. I come from the species that though I do not have wings, I can fly. I come from the species that made it to the moon and back. I come from the species that harnessed electricity. And especially you guys and gals in this business, you know the power of the human capacity. Things like the Hoover Dam. The incredible engineering feats that have been done throughout history because of the innovation of mankind. And we can't get all of our employees moving in the same direction? Are you freaking kidding me? Come on. Am I frustrated? I am frustrated. I said this at the national conference. Come on now. Let's rally. You, out of everybody, you're the executive leaders that can take nothing and make it something. We should be the example to the rest of the public sector of how to get things done, how to make things happen, how to marshal human capital in the 21st century. And many of you are doing it. I believe in you. Do you believe in you? And more importantly, do you believe in the people around you and their capacity and their ability? Because they are all these things as well. They are rare and unique creatures with incredible talent and ability. And are you bringing the best of them out? A great leader has the ability to see capacity and bring forward capacity and maximize that capacity. I want you to read that and think about and do an inventory of who you are and what you have and what those around you have and how to deploy it. Last page. Not today, but sometime in the next 12 weeks, I'm going to ask you to send me the answers to this question for you. I call them life's 5 most urgent questions. And as an executive leader, I think they're the most important questions you can be asking yourself on a daily basis. I think that they can act as a lighthouse that you can point to, a true north, if you will. What will be the greatest contribution to your family? Nia, Nadia, Kian, Gina, and Cassie. That's my family. What will be my greatest contribution to them? Roof over their head, food in their belly? Really? They can get that at the shelter, man. But what do they get because I'm their dad or I'm their husband? That's unlike what anybody else could give them. What will be my greatest contribution to those that I serve? We all serve somebody. And why are they lucky to be served by me? What will be the greatest contribution to those that you've led? How did you change their life? How did you make it better? How did you make it easier? How did you make it simpler? How did you make it more profound? Their journey. How did you make their journey better? What would be your greatest contribution to the organization? When you leave this agency, when you leave this department, what will your legacy be? And how about your society? How will you be remembered as an executive community leader? You are an executive community leader. If you're in this track, that means you're an executive leader, maybe a director, assistant director, whatever. That means you're an executive community leader, not just a departmental leader, you're a community leader. And why will your community be better because of you? In a few weeks, I'm going to ask you to answer these questions and send them in to me. So we begin a 12-week journey. It's not a game and it's not a joke to me. As I told you before, it cost me money to do this. I'm doing it because I believe in you, I believe in your departments, and I believe you have answers, and I believe when we can marshal your human capital, you can be a beacon of hope to other public service departments and agencies of how to do it right and how to make it happen. And because you touch every citizen from cradle to grave, you will have a generational impact. That's what I believe. Now, I don't know what you believe, that's what I believe. And me and the team, we're going to do everything we can to help you and your department move forward. Don't need to be sick to get better. I'll be in the chat box for a few minutes. You'll get an email from me on Monday morning. Then we'll start this journey. As always, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Have a great Halloween. Remember, it's Nevada Day. This is the day Nevada became a state. Happy Nevada Day. Take care, everybody.
Oh,